go time.
Seriously.
Looks good.
Heck of a baby bump.
Profile there, baby.
Jason Phelps game called. All he does is sit on his butt and
No, that's my whole motto. That's why we build good calls so you don't have to walk to them. He does. Freaking disgusting.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Gritty Bowman Podcast and to this week's episode of
Phelps's.
Go ahead.
Phelps's Big Nuggets.
Big Nuggets? I thought it was Elk Nuggets.
Phelps's exercised elk nuggets of information for you.
That's right. And so today, we're going to go over pearls of wisdom and
puddles
and these nuggets of information today.
Yeah.
You got the question today is, what are some of the, let's pick three top mistakes they're calling an elk when they're using.
I wish this information wasn't so painful to relive, because all this stuff kind of comes from
personal experience,
failing over and over and over.
It's okay to cry. This is a safe zone. I mean,
Brent, you got any tissues?
No. This is a lot of the stuff that as a new elk hunter, I wish somebody would have told me. I came from a background of no bow hunters. Nobody. You see a elk across the canyon, you shoot it with a rifle, and you go get haywire and drag it out whole. That's the elk hunting I came from. So I was like, oh, I got this blue Primo's Terminator. I'm gonna learn how to do this. And then there was a rude awakening that first year. Like, I called a few in before I bow hunted. Now it's now that I want to kill them, it's tough. So we'll get into these three. The biggest mistake I feel, if your goal, and these are all my opinion. There are 1,000 ways, to effectively hunt elk. There are great elk hunters that don't call. You got Chuck Adams that believes you can't call and herd bulls. You got guys like me that only call and herd bulls. And there's
the way you do it and the way Dan Evans does it, not the same.
No, not even close to the same. Or Cameron Haynes, he's not a huge caller. Sometimes he uses calls. There are multiple ways, and so I just want to caveat all this information. This is the way I do it. I found to be effective.
These are the Phelps Elk Nuggets.
That's right.
The Phelps Elk tips.
Yeah. So,
okay.
The first big one is calling your way into an elk. There's nothing cooler than hearing a bull bugle or respond to you or
reassuring.
Reassuring. Am I on the right path? So a lot of times we're out in the woods. We get an answer. He answers back, and we'll walk 100 yards and do it again because you want to get him to respond.
Yep.
Well, I always paint the picture of us. You and your wife are eating dinner in the corner of a bar or a restaurant, and I walk in the front door, slam the door open, and say, I'm coming. I'm coming for her. You got fight or you got flight. You can either run out the back door, or you can deal with me. Now, if I get to 100 yards closer. Or in a restaurant, I get 10 feet closer and yell at you again. The threat's becoming real, and so I feel we're kind of simulating that same thing. If I get 100 yards closer to a bull and say, "All right, here I am," you get 100 yards closer. All right, here I am. Well, we're all smart enough. Elk are smart enough to know that, man, this thing's getting closer. I think
a lot of these bulls, they're like, "Why fight?"
Exactly.
That's just risk.
Yep.
If they're content and they got their cows and they're not hot and mad, it's like you bugle from 100 yards. Or you close the distance 100 yards and you're bugling your way in, that bull just pushes his cows away.
Yeah, and a lot of times
you'll keep that buffer.
You'll see it. Yeah, I was going to say, it's just this cat and mouse game where you can never close any distance.
But if he doesn't know you're there and he doesn't know you're getting in on him, he doesn't move.
Yeah. So a lot of times we'll locate and then just try to make your best guess, and it comes back to, well, what are the elk doing? Can I see them? Can I hear them? What time of day is it? Are they going to bed? Are they coming to feed? So you're trying to, put a little bit of thought into it.
So sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's all right.
But this is what we would do, because you get in there and you're like, now you're kind of lost. You're like, oh, crap, I think they're over there. But you don't want to move any closer because you don't want to blow them out.
Yep.
So it kind of helps to try to figure out where they're at. So you want to bugle again, but then you've given up your position, and now he's moving with his cow.
Yeah.
So it's this balance. And what we found is maybe we just do a few little cow calls, little calf call, little and then he doesn't feel like there's a bull coming at him. It's just a
lost cow or
anything
a
to get him to make a sound. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. There's threatening responses and there's unthreatening. So you kind of go to that cow. You're like, well, there's not as much harm done. If I cow call. So if we need to, we'll cow call in between. If something was moving or we're not really sure, but a lot of times we try to make our best guess. And, just being in there, reading sign, if you've been there enough, you kind of got this gut feeling like, well, this is, the sign's leading this way, or you try to make your best guess and then really close the distance before you hammer on them. And, we use a lot of bugling, and it depends on what bull you're talking about. If we're talking about a herd bull, this works. If it's a satellite bull from 30 yards away, you might be able to sit there and cow call and he'll run that distance. But if it's a herd bull, you're kind of, playing a different game.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we get close as we can, uncomfortably close. We used to always joke around, if we're not bumping elk, we're not hunting elk type of there's a lot of times like, man, we put all this effort in and we got in here to, 80 yards and bumped these things for 70 yards and blew the whole morning. But that's just kind of our style, that super aggressive style we've talked about that, it's, some people may say, well, at this point you're not calling elk, you're just trying to get him to take 3 steps your way for a shot. And it is, but at the same time, this bull doesn't want to leave his cows. He's worked hard for them. They've went through the pecking order. They've did all of this work. They don't know who I am or if I'm going to come, whoop their butt and steal their cows. So it's easier for them to jet. So first biggest mistake is don't call your way in. One little side note, we have killed multiple elk by, all right, if you're not videoing or you don't care if your partner's with you, all right, leave him up on the road or up on the ridge bugling, get that bull to response because he feels comfortable. All right, we're 600 yards away, nothing.
Because you're staying away, right?
And let your partner sneak in.
Right. Okay.
We've done that for years.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a strategy that's kind of
our actual
180.
favorite technique is leave a guy back where the bull is always comfortable responding. In fact, seems to get off on the fact that nobody's coming any closer. I'm here, you're here, I'm here, you're here, I'm here, you're here, and they'll do that for hours.
Yeah, because he's like, oh, you're too afraid to come into me, right?
Yeah.
And they get all macho and they're back and forth. So we just leave our guy here and this guy here while the other two creep right in on top. And then when we're right there, that guy goes quiet back there.
These two pick it up.
And then we pick it up and do our sequence.
Our problem is we usually are always in 2-man groups. So it's like, well, you need 3 for this to work. Or if you're going to video. Yeah. Or, like I said, if we don't care about video, then just let the 2 split and get a hold of each other later.
Yeah.
The second, in my opinion, again, calling too quietly or like too small of a bull.
Okay.
And I draw on experience from this. I've hunted the coastal Willapa Hills in my backyard my entire life. We have in my opinion, smallest bulls on the face of the earth, whether it's body size, age class, genetics. I think we got the worst of all 3, so we have like blacktail-sized elk everywhere. We're lucky to have 5% of our bulls above a mature 5-point type. So I've grown up, but I've always been a big, large volume caller, and we've always called really big, and we still never had any trouble killing these raghorn bulls or the herd bulls or anything in between. Where it really, if you've been 10 yards, 5 yards from a giant bull or even a small bull bugling, the volume and intensity that they produce is unproducible in my opinion, by a human. Me and Charlie, me and Tyson, some of my hunting buddies, we can be 30 or 40 yards apart, cranking on bugles. We're like, man, I barely hear that thing. And that bull, 100 yards away is pointing at you and rips one off. You're like, wow, how? And then we're trying to guess how far he is. So
it shakes you right down to your core.
And
right?
I really didn't notice this until I was doing the video demonstration for all these diaphragms. I set my camera up and then walked like 100 yards down. I'm like, well, this is what it sounds like far away. And I'm like, man, I could barely pick up any game. Yeah. Like I'm calling so quiet, yet we go back on that same camera and a real bull's just cranking. So I've never had any trouble killing smaller bulls. I think you're definitely you're a big bull doesn't necessarily want to deal with a small bull or pull away from his cows for sure. He's like, well, if it's a small bull, I'll just wait for him to come in and I'll run him off. He's dealing with satellite bulls all the time anyways. But I think more from a volume perspective. Like if I can only reach a small portion of the elk, but if I'm calling bigger and I can reach these, deep in a canyon like we had talked about on a previous one, just the volume that I can bugle with just a slight percentage over Charlie. And I think that has a big difference over how many elk we can get started.
Why do you think? Go ahead, Mike.
I got a question. Like, when you're talking about no calling real loud, what about, like, stuff I've watched? What about attitude? Like, some bulls have got more of an attitude. So if they're really...
Yeah,
that's what you're talking about. That might push the smart bull that's got his cows already. Oh, I'm not dealing with you, bollocks. I'm out of here, right? So you're talking about just maybe coming in as an immature bull so that you're not too threatening.
Yeah, I mean, if we know we're trying to kill a satellite bull and I'm trying to get him to respond, I may not come in with a big bull. That might be one of the few situations where I'm like, all right, I might crank this down a little bit.
If you actually want to kill a little bull, then you can sound like a little bull.
Yeah, and if you want to kill a big bull, sound like a big bull, and or sound like a big bull to kill them all. It's just a lot of the bulls I've killed that were satellite bulls to other herds. They've just came in, I think, out of curiosity. They're not coming in bugling. I can either watch them across a clear cut or I can hear them. And they just kind of, a big bull. What does he have cows or?
For years and years and years, I've heard hunters go, yeah, you just want to sound like a satellite because then it's not threatening. It's and I know guys who work pretty hard to do a small bull sound, and they rely on that a lot for their hunting. What you're saying is, bag that, go big or go home.
I do.
Sound like a monster.
I do.
Be pissed off. Be a big dude.
Yeah, but with the idea that there are times to cow call and there are times to maybe call like a smaller bull. It's not a coverall, but for the majority of guys, especially when you're locating, especially when you're in tight. You talked about the attitude. Like when I go to rip a challenge bugle off, and part of my routine calling, an estrus whine, followed by a challenge bugle. I know like Corey Jacobson does that in the opposite. He wants the response to him, but I go in and I am as gnarly and as big and as growly and as temperamental as possible. And you're trying to get that bull to turn up, and if he answers you, I usually cut him off. It doesn't make for very good video because you're always walking over that bull and don't ever let him be heard. But I'm instantly.
It makes great video when he comes charging.
It does. It does.
Oh yeah, because you've pissed him off. Right?
Yeah. You're walking on him. You're not letting him talk. It's like my little 6-year-old kid and 4-year-old kid. They start to mock you, and you're like, let me talk, or he'll keep mocking you. He's like, all right, I can see how this works because I'm fired up now.
Right.
My little 6-year-old's mocking me or walking on top of me.
No, I've seen that when you cut the bull off, it has a huge effect on them.
Yeah,
they get that can get them more angry than
mimicry and cutting them off is huge.
Right.
Okay, so show us real quick a little bugle, like a little satellite sound, and then like a big challenge bugle. What does that sound like?
Yeah, I want to hear that.
So. I mean, this reed, this is my beast reed. It's pretty cranked up to make big bull sounds, but I'll do my best. It just doesn't have a lot of growl. It doesn't have that real high ringing. It's not real aggressive. I mean, like if I'm coming in,
it just sounds like a kind of a young bull.
I mean, something immature, not fully developed. And
like he's excited. Yay, guys! I'm here. I'm the woods. My balls have dropped too.
And then you're coming in with a challenge bugle. I'm trying to put as much voice in the beginning. It's only clean for a little bit, and I'm adding voice in. And you can either do that with a lip ball or just with a voice inflection with your throat. Mm-hmm. I don't typically lip ball very much when I'm out in the woods. So this is what my challenge bugle typically sounds like, and I usually grunt on the end of it.
Yeah.
So it's not a whole lot of clean. You do go and get high, but you're trying to gargle your voice the whole time through it, and just basically I'm pissed and I'm here to take your cows or
right.
So
it'd be helpful if Mark could learn to do that. Son, just like that. Okay, Mark, exactly like that.
Year number 3.
No, Calling's a lot of fun, but I call big like that. If I'm in close, a lot of times you can pull satellites.
The third issue. And this isn't the only thing, but I've heard this happen a lot where, we're just picking 3 mistakes. These are some of the common ones you hear guys make. And this goes back to something from my own experience. And that is when guys will rely heavily on cow calling instead of bugling. And I personally think bugling is more effective. Now, we'll have a lot of guys who disagree, who rely heavily on cow calling.
Yeah, they're going to send us their list or a list
Yeah.
of pictures and say, well,
Yeah.
I killed all these bulls with cow calls.
Totally. But just in my experience, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like I've had far more success with the bugling than I have trying to get them in with cow calls. And it kind of one of the reasons why I used to cow call a lot instead of bugle was because I didn't want to. Cow calls were a little easier for me, and I didn't want to spook them. I didn't want to push them, whether I sounded too small or too big or whatever. I didn't want to, I want to just coax them in gently to this beautiful cow elk who is waiting patiently for her man, right? That's what I wanted to happen. Well,
Super model elk.
That's
model
right.
Here, look at 'em.
What do we name her, Mark? Like Super Babe Elk. And that's in my mind. Well, the bull just didn't respond, right? And then I do some hyper hot, like, come here, big boy, I'm over here, like thing. And he didn't come, right? And it's like, I don't get it. Don't I sound sexy enough? Well, what I realized, blacktail hunting, I'd do the same thing when I rattled. I'd be like, well, I don't want to rattle because if I rattle, then the buck might spook and run, And but if I do, maybe he'll come in. So maybe I'll just do this little tickle thing and try to like rattle gentle and try to. Well, this is what I've realized. I can rattle in front of these bucks. They don't even raise their head. They don't even move, and that happens more often than not. And same thing with cow calling. I'll cow call, and I've realized that I'm just another noise that he hears constantly.
Yep.
And even if I do hyper hot and all that, he's hearing that all day long. Yep. And so I don't think it gets their attention or gets really. It's not as effective as maybe some other stuff is.
Yeah, I mean we're essentially, when you're cow calling, you're kind of trying to reverse nature in a sense. Typically if there is a lost cow out there just wandering around, he bugles, the cow goes to the herd.
Yeah.
Right.
We're trying to reverse. So we're going to say, all right, there's one cow potentially out here. He's never smelled or made visual contact. I've got 20 cows potentially over here.
One's like in seat heat right now.
Yeah, or he's got satellite bulls just pestering him. He's spending all of his efforts keeping those stinking things away. Yeah, I'm going to go wander off 200 yards and go check out this cow I have.
Right.
And like we said, it may work occasionally, and it has worked. I know it's worked, but I think the majority of the time we're trying to put some of these percentages in our favor. I think when you're herd bull specifically, if you're trying to kill a herd bull, bugling is, in my opinion, a better way to go.
This film that you guys did this recently on Angry Spike or Angry Mountain Productions, right?
Amp.
Amp. You guys, Gabriel shoots a bull that Charlie calls in, and he cow called that sucker the whole time. But it was a younger bull.
Yeah, really young. I mean,
and he's by himself.
I mean, he's a
little
really
tiny bull, right?
Teeny, Gabriel-sized bull.
So this bull, though, I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. In fact, that's what I would have done. I wouldn't want to scream at this bull with a big man bugle. Because he's a younger little bull and he's curious, and you're like, there's a little lady over here. Yeah. She wandered off from the herd. Come on over. That's perfect. That's genius. But if you're trying to call a big herd bull away from his cows,
it's rough. They were just sitting at lunch. Charlie, I think they ripped a bugle off though before, and he answered. Charlie, had a pretty good idea that they were dealing with a semi-immature bull, and that's his specialty. If he has a forte, Charlie's forte is cow calling in satellite bulls,
seducing the young ones.
Yeah, he is. He's got it figured out. So in that case, if you
seducing the young ones, the pedophile of the elk,
So, if
there's your nugget right there.
If you're dealing with that age class, 4.5, definitely cow calls.
Yeah.
But if you've set a goal out, or you really want to have a crack at that big bull, you've got to think, what's this picture you're painting? I'm a big bull here to take yours. If you get close enough, you give him that fight or flight. You don't give him the chance for flight. You give him the chance, and a lot of times, I think we're going to cover it later, but my calling, this big scenario, if I was to put a painting out there on what I'm trying to draw up here, it's like, one of your cows is on the edge of your herd, is coming into estrus, and now this bull is here to challenge you for him.
Right.
And that's kind of how I set this scene up, as I get close. And
is that what you would think to be the perfect situation to get yourself the herd bull? Setting it up like that?
Anybody that tells me that's not their lie, I believe like 1%. Like, yeah, there are guys strictly, out there trying to fill their freezers, and I am too. But if there's a satellite, if there's this little raghorn and this herd bull standing at the same exact distance from you, I want to see the one guy that's not going to lose an arrow at the big bull instead of the little one. It's like everybody's goal, I think, is to go out there, but if the opportunity doesn't present itself. But I think there's something inherent that's deep inside of us that goes out with the goal of
it's twofold, dude. You shoot a big bull, you get more meat. Plus, you get a much bigger set of antlers, which is also cool. And you just killed the bull that's already bred a bunch of animals, not the young one that hasn't done that yet.
Right.
Yeah, I don't try to get too much into the sport or the challenge, but there's a different.
I'm just not, dude. I have not killed enough elk to be that choosy.
That's why I just I just need that big one to come in first is my ideal situation, and then, it's like
I'll shoot that little bastard on the outside because I've never shot one yet.
I just man, I like eating them, man.
They
it's
are.
That's a big trophy right
so
there.
Good.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to kill herd bull, you can play around with cow calls, but I think you need to rip them off on the bugle and and paint that scenario.
So, recap: all three are what now?
The biggest mistake, I think, if you're trying to call an elk in, don't bugle your way all the way to him. Number 2, don't get hung up on calling too small or too little. And the number 3 is if you're trying to kill a herd bull, don't be afraid to bugle. Get close and be aggressive and bugle.
Don't cow call too much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not it's probably not going to get their attention.
Yeah. You're trying to reverse nature and make stuff go backwards.
Cool. There's lots more. We'll hit some more another time. Thank you for listening to this episode of Phelps Nuggets, Elk Nuggets.
Phelps Elk Nuggets. That's
Stay
right.
gritty.
Yeah,
Stay gritty.
big time.
Okay, gritty friends, I hope you enjoyed that podcast. If you did, please take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes, Podbean, or Stitcher. We love reading your reviews. And connect with us on social media if you're on there. Look us up on Facebook and Instagram, and take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can receive notifications when we upload new videos. We've got a sweet deal with Mountain Ops. You get 20% off on all Mountain Ops supplements, combo packs, and apparel when you type in the word gritty at checkout. If you're a hardcore elk hunter, or you want to be, go to the Elk 101 website online and check them out. Our friend Corey Jacobson is killing it with some of the best elk hunting information and entertainment on the web. If you haven't heard, we're doing a huge gear giveaway to try and grow and expand the gritty community on Facebook and Instagram. I asked a bunch of friends to pitch in on this gear giveaway, and they all came through with some awesome stuff. Our friends at Kifaru, Rockslide, First Light, Phelps Game Calls, One Shot Gear, Mountain Ops, Triple X Archery, Blacktail Outdoors, and Is It September Yet are pitching in some sweet gear for the giveaway. We'll announce all the details in the next few weeks. All you have to do to be entered to win is like our Gritty Bowman Facebook page and follow us on Instagram. All right, friends, let me leave you with one other quote from Theodore Roosevelt, who said, "It behooves every man to remember that the work of the critic is of altogether secondary importance, and that, in the end, progress is accomplished by the man who does things." We all have a choice. We can be people who do things or people who criticize the work of others. It's pretty simple, really. Get out there and do your thing. Good luck on your hunts, and stay gritty.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowman.
Gritty Bowman.